Hello everyone, and we have just finished up our first ever test or exam in med school. And so basically the way my program works is we have these things called blocks where basically you have a bunch of classes like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, genetics, and they lump them all into this block that's supposed to be relevant to like a given system like head and neck or something. And so you basically do like a really deep dive into that block, and then at the end of that block you get a test basically like every week or 2 weeks. And so the I can't get specific on the content of these exams because that's a violation of the ethics, but what I can talk about is like what's the general experience like, how does it compare to things I've taken in the past as an engineer. And so a lot of the test itself is pretty much the straightforward, just making sure you're understanding the core concepts from, the lectures that they've presented, making sure that like you've understood, like, if you had damage to some nerve, how would that affect a particular, muscle? So like what innervates the muscle, being able to know like exactly what would happen if, a particular, muscle failed, what would you not be able to do? So just anatomy type questions, biochem questions with, knowing key enzymes and all that stuff. It's basically a lot of yes, no type deal things of like you either knew it and you memorized it, or you didn't know it and that was it. And our test was, an hour long individual exam, and then we literally take that exact same test but as a group. And so in the group setting, you get two scores. You get your individual score and you get your group score. Basically, you will talk through your reasoning, and it can lead to some pretty heated conflicts, or, I mean, not conflicts, but, there's gonna be disagreements, and you can always put down what you want to put down on your specific group test, and someone else in your group can put in that same thing. But I think it's a pretty cool way of helping people learn and, build in that knowledge of just getting that extra level of talking it through, your reasoning why a wrong answer is a wrong answer and why you think the right answer is the right answer. So that was cool. And honestly, just test anxiety I think is very palpable. I for some reason, like, I noticed this in myself when I'm about to take a big test, like I just assume that whatever worst thing that can happen will happen. Like my iPad is gonna break, my car will break, I'm not gonna be able to find my keys, I'm not gonna have my badge, I'm not gonna be able to identify myself. Like I'm, just all these things, my brain will start worrying about these things that have nothing to do with the actual content of the exam. And, I think hopefully over time it'll get easier, but still, and everyone there is experiencing test anxiety to some degree. And in terms of like how well do you sleep the night before, and like knowing that you got to get your sleep so that you perform well, is like a whole other thing of like, let's give ourselves insomnia trying to worry about making sure we get enough sleep. So it's really just kind of not it's stressful, but they literally had us it's because of COVID and they want us to do it in person. We had to put on N95 masks, which are pretty, restrictive in terms of breathing. And it's just hard to breathe, but hopefully like you can just focus on the actual test and not get bogged down and, thrown off. And, it's just little things like, or well, not even so little things, but just, the actual exam itself, not super hard. It's just a bunch of yes, no memory stuff. Like, and if you got it, great. If you didn't, whatever. But yeah, it's not like what an engineering exam was like for me at UC Berkeley, where you very well could spend the whole time just on one question and not even get the first part right and then go down a huge rabbit hole. So the actual exams in med school are not as tough as what I was expecting or fearing. So it's mostly just kind of high level stuff. And the cool thing is that, hopefully the teachers that I have, they do kind of throw in some practice questions in their lectures. So if you like read their lectures carefully, you'll see the types of questions that they write, and it just tells you a lot about the level of expectation that they have for like how well should you have memorized a particular feature or structure. And talking it through with a group of people is super helpful. I'm really glad that we're doing that. And it's also great because like in the group settings, it's like 3 or 4 people, people can kind of start shining through in terms of like their experience. Maybe someone's a lot better at anatomy than other people in the group, and maybe someone's better at genetics or biochem. And so it's like, it's great to just get like nice groups that are hopefully balanced in terms of expertise to work through stuff. So, I think that's all there is to it. I'm glad it's over, but honestly, there's no time to even celebrate or relax because I literally have to go into a lecture right now, and then for the next few hours, and then I have to drive to a different site to do OPP later today. So it's like just a bunch of it's a packed schedule. But this is just kind of initial impression on like what's a med school exam like. And so I think honestly the biggest thing is just making sure that you stay up to date with the material. You figure out what tools work and don't work for you to learn stuff and retain it. Whether that's Anki or writing notes down, making your own physical flashcards, or like annotating lectures, I think is something that I'm getting into. I think is kind of cool and helping me with the anatomy stuff. And also in terms of anatomy, just literally spending as much time as you can in lab looking at stuff. Obviously not messing anything up, but just looking at it, feeling it. Like, how do you differentiate between when you're in anatomy, like they drain the blood out of the arteries, and so it's tough to distinguish an artery from a nerve. And so it's like, how are you supposed to do that when you need to identify? First of all, they'll just pin this thing, and number one, is it an artery or a nerve? And if it is an artery or a nerve, like which one is it? So it's just like, that's the kind of stuff that like you gotta be there, you gotta feel it, you gotta see a bunch of them, you gotta know that like arteries are supposed to have that elastin protein in them that kind of gives them that flexibility and stretchiness that you just don't get with the other stuff. And then the veins also are things that are usually darker because the blood hasn't been drained out of those when they're preserving the cadavers. So there's just a bunch of things like that you don't get from going to lecture. Like, you just got to be in lab in person in real life to see it, to feel it, to experience it, that are things that will hopefully be there in your brain when you're taking that test, when you're wondering like, what innervates this muscle? What happens if a surgeon accidentally, cut through a given, L3 spinal nerve? Like, what's going to happen then? So those types of things, just being able to like instantly kind of know the answers, like that is really, really important for these types of tests where it's basically mostly memorizing. And what I'm kind of bummed out about is like there's not really all that much calculations. It's pretty much just memory and knowing what things to associate. Like, people just memorize tables and then they can just know exactly, like, when I see this, I mean, it means this, and I do it for this. Like, it's really just kind of like a quick lookup memory thing, not really problem solving necessarily, which is something that I'd rather be given like questions like those, like what I would get on engineering tests, but that's just because of my background and what I like. But I'm gonna wrap things up with that. Hope this is interesting stuff. I can understand more as to why people think, these exams honestly are not hard. They're just, it's the thing that makes it hard is the amount of material that they can ask you about. And so it's like, how do you make sure that you have an understanding of that material? And also, how deep of an understanding of that material do you need? Because sometimes you can start using intuition a little bit once you've got enough of a depth of your knowledge that it can help a lot. So just kind of like literally figuring out what is that for you personally for a given class. It's going to be like the constant thing that's going on in your brain the whole time. So I can wrap things up there. Thanks all for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time.